For a week, Mr. R. Childen had been anxiously watching the mail, but the valuable shipment from the Rocky Mountain states had not arrived. As he opened up his store on Friday morning and saw only letters on the floor by the mail slot, he thought, "I'm going to have an angry customer." Pouring himself a cup of instant tea from the 5-cent wall dispenser, he got a broom and began to sweep. Soon he had the front of American Artistic Handcrafts Incorporated ready for the day, all spick and span with a cash register full of change, a fresh vase of marigolds, and the radio playing background music. Outdoors along the sidewalk, businessmen hurried toward their offices along Montgomery Street. Far off, a cable car passed. Children halted to watch it with pleasure. Women in their long, colorful silk dresses. He watched them, too. Then the phone rang. He turned to answer it. "Yes," a familiar voice said to his answer. Childen's heart sank. "This is Mr. Tagomi." Okay, so, yes, a familiar voice said to his answer. Childen's heart sank. "This is Mr. Tagomi. Did my Civil War recruiting poster arrive yet, sir? Please recall, you promised it some time last week." The fussy, brisk voice, barely polite, barely keeping the code. "Did I not give you a deposit, sir, Mr. Childen, with that stipulation? This is to be a gift, you see. I explained that. For a client." "Extensive inquiries," Childen began, "which I have made at my own expense, Mr. Tagomi, sir, regarding the promised parcel, which you realize originates outside of this region and is therefore—" But Mr. Tagomi broke in. "Then it has not arrived." "No, Mr. Tagomi, sir." An icy pause. "I can wait no furthermore," Tagomi said. "No, sir." Childen gazed morosely through the store window at the warm, bright day and the San Francisco office buildings. "A substitute, then. Your recommendation, Mr. Childen." Tagomi deliberately mispronounced the name, insult within the code that made Childen's ears burn. Place pulled, the dreadful mortification of their situation. Robert Childen's aspirations and fears and torments rose up and exposed themselves, swamped him, stopping his tongue. He stammered, his hand sticky on the phone. The air of the store smelled of the marigolds. The music played on, but he felt as if he were falling into some distant sea. "Well," he managed to mutter, "butter churn, ice cream maker circa 1900. His mind refused to think. Just when you forgot about it, just when you fool yourself. He was 38 years old, and he could remember the pre-war days, the other times. Franklin D. Roosevelt and the World's Fair, the former, better world. "Could I bring various desirable items out to your business location?" he mumbled. An appointment was made for 2:00. Have to shut store, he knew as he hung up the phone. No choice. Have to keep goodwill of such customers. Business depends on them. Standing shakily, he became aware that someone, a couple, had entered the store. Young man and girl, both handsome, well-dressed, ideal. He calmed himself and moved professionally, easily in their direction, smiling. They were bending to scrutinize a counter display, had picked up a lovely ashtray. Married, he guessed. Live out in City of the Winding Mists, the new exclusive apartments on Skyline overlooking Belmont. "Hello," he said, and felt better. They smiled at him without any superiority, only kindness. His displays, which really were the best of their kind on the coast, had awed them a little. He saw that and was grateful. They understood. "Really excellent pieces," the young man said. Childen bowed spontaneously. Their eyes, warm not only with human bond, but with the shared enjoyment of the art objects he sold, their mutual tastes and satisfactions, remained fixed on him. They were thanking him for having things like these for them to see, pick up and examine, handle, perhaps, without even buying. Yes, he thought, they know what sort of store they are in. This is not tourist trash, not redwood plaques reading Muir Woods, Marin County, PSA, or funny signs or girly rings or postcards or views of the bridge. The girl's eyes especially, large, dark. How easily, Childen thought, I could fall in love with a girl like this. How tragic my life then, as if it weren't bad enough already. The stylish black hair, lacquered nails, pierced ears for the long, dangling, brass, handmade earrings. Your earrings, he murmured. Purchased here, perhaps? No, she said, at home. Childen nodded. No contemporary American art. Only the past could be represented here, in a store such as his. You are here for long, he asked, to our San Francisco? I'm stationed here indefinitely, the man said, with Standard of Living for Unfortunate Areas Planning Commission of Inquiry. Pride showed on his face. Not the military, not one of the gum-chewing, boorish draftees with their greedy peasant faces wandering up Market Street, gaping at the body shows, the sex movies, the shooting galleries, the cheap nightclubs with photos of middle-aged blondes holding their nipples between their wrinkled fingers and leering, the honky-tonk jazz slums that made up most of the flat part of San Francisco, rickety tin and board shacks that had sprung up from the ruins even before the last bomb fell. No, this man was of the elite, cultured, educated, even more so than Mr. Tagomi, who was, after all, a high official with the ranking trade commission on the Pacific coast. Tagomi was an old man. His attitudes had formed in the war cabinet days. Had you wished American traditional ethnic art objects as a gift? Childen asked, or to decorate perhaps a new apartment for your stay here? If the latter, his heart picked up. An accurate guess, the girl said. We are starting to decorate. A bit undecided. Do you think you could inform us? I could arrange to arrive at your apartment, yes, Childen said. Bringing several hand cases, I can suggest in context at your leisure. This, of course, is our specialty. He dropped his eyes so as to conceal his hope. There might be thousands of dollars involved. I am getting in a New England table, maple, all wood-legged, no nails, immense beauty and worth, and a mirror from the time of the 1812 war, and also the Aboriginal art, a group of vegetable-dyed goat hair rugs. I myself, the man said, prefer the art of the cities. Yes, Childen said eagerly. Listen, sir. I have a mural from the WPA post office period, original, done on board, 4 sections, depicting Horace Greeley, priceless collector's item. Ah, the man said, his dark eyes flashing, and a Victrola cabinet of 1920 made into a liquor cabinet. Ah. And, sir, listen, framed, signed picture of Jean Harlow. The man goggled at him. Shall we make arrangements? Childen said, seizing the correct psychological instant. From his inner coat pocket he brought his pen, notebook. I shall take your name and address, sir and lady. Afterward, as the couple strolled from his store, Childen stood, hands behind his back, watching the street. Joy, if all business days were like this. But it was more than business, the success of his store. It was a chance to meet a young Japanese couple socially, on a basis of acceptance of him as a man, rather than him as a Yank or, at best, a tradesman who sold art objects. Yes, these new young people of the rising generation, who did not remember the days before the war, or even the war itself, They were the hope of the world. Place difference did not have the significance for them. It will end, Childen thought, someday. The very idea of place, not governed and governing, but people. And yet he trembled with fear, imagining himself knocking at their door. He examined his notes. The Kosuras, being admitted, no doubt offered tea. Would he do the right thing, know the proper act and utterance at each moment? Or would he disgrace himself, like an animal, by some dismal faux pas? The girl's name was Betty. Such understanding in her face, he thought. The gentle, sympathetic eyes. Surely, even a short time in the store, she had glimpsed his hopes and defeats. His hopes. Suddenly he felt dizzy. What aspirations bordering on the insane, if not the suicidal, did he have? But it was known, relations between Japanese and Yanks, although generally it was between a Japanese man and a Yank woman. This he quailed at the idea, and she was married. He whipped his mind away from the pageant of his involuntary thoughts and began busily opening the morning's mail. His hands, he discovered, were still shaking. And then he recalled his 2:00 appointment with Mr. Tagomi. At that, his hands ceased shaking, and his nervousness became determination. I've got to come up with something acceptable, he said to himself. Where? How? What? A phone call. Sources. Business ability. Scrape up a fully restored 1929 Ford, including a fabric top, black. Grand Slam to keep the patronage forever. Crated original mint Terminator airmail plane or tri-motor airmail plane discovered in a barn in Alabama, etc. Produce mummified head of Mr. B. Bill, including flowing white hair. Sensational American artifact. Make my reputation in top connoisseur circles throughout the Pacific, not excluding the home islands. To inspire himself, he lit up a marijuana cigarette. Excellent Land of Smiles brand. In his room on Hayes Street, Frank Fink lay in bed, wondering how to get up. Sun glared past the blind onto the heap of clothes that had fallen onto the floor. His glasses, too. Would he step on them? Try to get to the bathroom by other route, he thought. Crawl or roll. His head ached, but he did not feel sad. Never look back, he decided. Time? The clock on the dresser. 11:30. Good grief. But still he lay. I'm fired, he thought. Yesterday he had done wrong at the factory. Spouted the wrong kind of talk to Mr. Wyndham Matson, who had a dished-in face with Socrates-type nose, diamond ring, gold fly zipper. In other words, a power, a throne. Frank's thoughts wandered groggily.